Hey guys, Dr. Decks here. Today we are box framing in some steps on a front porch on a deck, and I'm gonna show you the process and how we do it. We're about 50% done right now, so a good time to come in and learn a little bit about elevation and how you might be able to do something on your own deck. If you like this video, please don't forget to click that subscribe button, as we have a very low percentage of people that actually do subscribe to our channel, and we do appreciate it when you do click that subscribe button, so thank you for that. Thanks for coming to this channel and watching our videos. We really appreciate it. All right, so what we have over here is we have an upper deck, which we've done a little bit of reframing on. You can kind of see over here, this deck used to have a 45-degree angle that came back, and then this deck stopped right here. So what we did is we reframed everything all the way to the house, so it gives it a much more open feel and a wider look, and it really just cleaned the lines up a lot compared to what they had before. They had a tree coming up over here and a little pathway going down into this space, and it didn't really make a whole lot of sense. So we kind of kept most of the framing. We replaced the outside rim joists because they were rotten from decay, and we got those two framed up, and then it came time to access the lower driveway area. And this is where things can get tricky, and a lot of people don't understand stairs and they're nervous or are concerned about how to do them. There's several different ways that you can build stairs. This particular method, we're actually doing a box frame, which we're basically building two little mini decks on top of it and stacking them on top of each other to create access down to the desired point of access. So to figure this out, you got to start out and you got to know your elevation. So let's do that. I'm going to kind of run you through the thought process of what we do, and then why we made one a certain size and another a certain size, and I'll explain to that. It all kind of boils down to, over here, we have a hose bib, and the client and I decided we don't want to move that. We don't want to call in a plumber and spend, several $100s moving this hose bib up the wall or away from where it is. We just wanted to leave the water alone, so I decided to build around it. So to do that, I can project a certain amount of distance out with a stair, but I can't go too far. If I split the difference, I'm going to be right in the middle of the faucet, so I don't want that. So we're going to do our first step at 3 boards wide, and then our lower step's going to be 4 boards wide, okay? So a little bit different width on these two steps. It's not considered a staircase. If I had multiple steps, I wouldn't be able to change the width of the stairs. They'd have to all be equal. But because I only have 2 rises in this set of stairs, I can do whatever I want. Okay, what we had to do is figure out, okay, here's our lower landing area, and then we want to land onto this concrete. Now we're going to actually be filling this section in over here with another little mini deck or stair, a step, that's going to be at the same height and all the way to the wall and the same depth as this one right here. So what I had to do is I took a level and then I measured from the concrete to the bottom of the level. Now, depending on where I measure, it can vary. So over here, we're about 20 1/4, and down the way, we're closer to 21. There's 20 1/2. So by the time we got down to there, we're about 21 inches. So I took an average of all these different measurements and decided, okay, we're about 21 inches of variance. So we need 2 steps, but think about it, you have 3 rises. You have 3 rises to get to the top of the deck. So 21 divided by 3 is 7 inches. Okay, so what we did is we framed our lower box in 2x6, which is 5 1/2. We added a 1/2 inch shim to the bottom of it, which I would do anyways to protect it from getting wet and rotting or decay. So that's a PVC shim on the bottom of this 2x6. So by doing that, that gives us a 6-inch rise. And after we add the deck board on top of it, we will have a 7-inch step. So that gives us a residual of 14 inches, right? So now I need to make my second step 7 inches as well. And I'm going to stack that right on top of this frame here. Now that we know the height that we need, the rise of each step, we have to think a little bit about the depth. So because of the water outlet over here, the faucet, but because of the faucet, we have a constraint, which means I can only come so deep on the first step, and then the lower step's gonna be one board wider. The cool thing about this setup is the bottom step's gonna have 4 boards, and then the second step is gonna have 3 boards, and they're gonna be full width boards. So I don't have to rip anything down. Everything's just gonna be full width. I managed to figure it out. I had the client come out and take a look, and what we're gonna have, basically, if I use this level as simulating fascia, this step's gonna stop right here. So there's enough room to get my hand in here and to be able to hook this up without having a mess. And then he's just gonna put a hose reel somewhere, either mount to the house or have a wind-up reel or something right here. So there's lots of space to do that now with the width of these stairs being a little bit wider than normal. Basically, we have this figured out. We know the width that we need for our staircase, the projection. We also know what the width is. So basically what I have is I'm framing, like I said, I framed this step in 2x6, but the second step I framed in 2x8. But 2x8 by default is between 7 1/4 and 7 3/4 inches thick, depending on how wet it is where I come from. We're gonna rip it all down to 7 inches so we have those equal rises. If your stairs vary more than 3/8 of an inch, if your stairs vary more than 3/8 of an inch from step to step, it won't pass code. So try to make your rises as equal as possible, especially that bottom one. You gotta remember, your bottom step, you gotta deduct the thickness of your decking material off the bottom stair, or else it's gonna be that much too high than the rest of the staircase. Does that make sense? If it doesn't, leave me a question below and I'll try to help you through it, okay? So basically, what we have, a couple boards over by the table saw that are 7 1/2 inches, and I gotta rip them, or about 7 1/4 inches. I gotta rip them down to 7 inches, and then I still have to cut all of my supports through the center of the stair, which all will have to be cut to length, and then they'll have to be ripped to that 7-inch height as well, because we're stacking this right on top of this other staircase. So that's what we're gonna do right now. All right, guys, so I have my front and back of my second box step cut, ripped to height, and I have it laid out. We have a subsequent video that you can look up. I think it's called How to Lay Out Deck Framing. And it'll show you how to equally space all your joists that you need. So what I have to do now is I have to figure out the depth of what I need for this upper stair, which I already know the answer to. And I have to cut all those blocks and rip them all down to 7 inches on the table saw, and then I can bring them back over here and assemble this stair. So that's what we're gonna do now. I need 10 at 13 1/2. So I'm gonna show you guys something quick. I'm gonna show you guys a shortcut. When you're cutting the same length of wood, framing, blocking, whatever, it's always nice to have a way to do it quickly and accurately. So I'm gonna set up a jig with my cut hub. I'll make these 10 cuts rapidly once I set up the jig. Sometimes setting up a jig can take a few minutes, but it's usually a quicker way than measuring 10 times the same measurement over and over and then hoping that they're all accurate. This is just a little bit quicker way to make sure that's the case. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna set up this jig that Cut Hub makes, like so. Okay, now it's not locked down yet, but all I'm gonna do is grab a couple scraps, and I know that I need 13 1/2 inches. What I'll do is I'll kind of mark out and identify where my cut needs to be on the saw, and then I'll move this material stop at the proper location, lock it down, and then I'll double check it on the saw. Looks good. I'm just gonna make a little kerf in it. 13 1/2, so good. So now I can just start cutting these blocks, and I can cut them really fast. I don't have to sit here and try to measure each one, because now I've got it ready to go. So this board has some cracks on both ends, so I'm gonna cut a couple inches off of it. That's why we always save our blocking, because you never know when you might need some 13, 14-inch blocks. So I'm always cutting my shortest boards first, and then I get into our longer scrap after that. Okay, so there's 10 blocks. Now what I'm gonna do is I gotta rip these down to 7 inches, just like the rest of the frame. So I'm gonna choose the nicest side and rip the opposite side of that, or pick the bad side of each of these boards, if there is one, and rip that down so that I can kind of eliminate the worst part of the board. So I just quickly grade these. Like this one has a knot in it. You could hit that with a screw and it might pop the screw out. So I'm going to cut that side out. So I'm gonna put all the bad sides facing this way, or the side I don't like. This one has some rough kerf in it, so I don't like that, so I'm gonna put that to that side. It's not that big of a deal, but it just makes a little bit of difference in the end, in my opinion. So now I have these all selected. I'll take them over the table saw, and I'll go ahead and rip each one of these. Something I wanna show you guys real quick. Where I come from, we just ripped a bunch of different boards from different cutoffs of different lengths and different sizes. And these are the rips. I just ripped 10 boards, all the same width, but if you look at all the cutoffs, they all vary in thickness. I'm gonna turn them all upside down so you can maybe see it a little bit better, the sharp edge. But like, here's the thickest one, maybe these two, compared to this guy here, and you can kind of see the difference in how thick the boards are. And that's another reason why we like to grade our framing and also rip things the height, because they can vary that much, even more than that, actually. They can vary up to a ½ an inch at times, which can be really frustrating. Little kindling, anyone? So now that we have those pieces ripped, we'll take them back up to our 2 boards for our box frame, and we'll start assembling this together. All right, so now we have all of our blocks made for in between our outside band boards, rim joists, whatever you want to call them, box step. So the next thing is we just need to attach it all. There's a couple different ways you can do that. You can go ahead and use a air gun, nail gun everything together. One thing I found is that over time, sometimes even a 16D galvanized nail can come loose, which can create a squeak. So we prefer to screw our stairs together because they take more abuse than the deck will. And we use a 3.5 inch construction screw made by Fasten Master. It's a T25 star drive. So we use those to screw this together with. Another thing that I recommend is when you're screwing near an end grain of any board, that you use a pre-drill bit. We use tapered pre-drill bits. These are made by Irwin, and they are like a number 10 tapered drill bit, and I really like these a lot. And we're just gonna pre-drill the holes. We're gonna do 3 screws. On a 2x8, we do 3 screws per joist. On a 2x6, we use 2 screws per joist. And we'll screw this side in, all 3. And then once I get past here, I don't really pre-drill all these. I just go ahead and run and gun. If I have a hard spot and a knot or something like that, I'll go back and pre-drill those. So now that I've got this kind of where I want it, I'm gonna go ahead and run a pre-drill. And then I'm gonna go ahead and put that first one in. Once I put the first screw in, it's gonna lock everything together. It'll make it easier to put the rest of them together. So, okay, first one's in. Kind of line it up, make sure it's where you want it, and then you can... The only reason I'm doing this is if I just went ahead and ran those screws in right now, you might risk just running cracks, which actually weakens everything. So I don't want to have a bunch of end grain cracks on my framing, so I usually like to pre-drill my ends. Now that that's done, I'll just go along and I'll set the top screw in each one of these first. I'll lay this out, I'll put it exactly where I want it. Tighten it up, and then I'll go back and double check it for square. I've already pre-marked the inside of each of each of these marks. You can see them right here for both boards. Everything's done. So all I have to do is just make sure I'm on point. Another quick tip for you, if you use pressure treated hemlock like I do, they have all these incisions. I get thousands of people that ask me all the time, doctor, what are those all about? Well, what they're about is that's how they force the treatment deeper into the product. It's called incising, okay? But the cool thing about the incising is when they run it through the board, most of these incisions are square to the board. So if I put my square up here, you'll notice they're all in a straight line, okay? So you can use that as a visual when you're putting in your screws. That way, you don't have screws going sideways or out of plane or out of plumb or whatever. You got to make sure that they're in nice and straight, okay? So you can always use that as a, if you don't have that where you're from, then just use a square. Or you can do it by eyesight, but if your eyesight isn't so great, you might have crooked screw lines. Which probably won't matter because it's going to be covered. But I don't know, I always try to do things a certain caliber whenever I'm doing them. Okay, so this, if you'll notice here, I have this on a piece of plywood. Even though this is all ripped to the same height, this board's a little low, so I'm just gonna raise it up a tidge. So when I put it in, it's flush. And then I'll go ahead and put in my other 2 screws, and I'll keep moving. Now that I have my box framed, we're gonna stack it right on top of the existing one that's already in place. So all we gotta do is pick it up, move it over there, and then we have to secure it to the attachment points that I've put on the existing deck. And then we're gonna screw these together. I'm gonna toe screw some fasteners through the face of this into the existing joists on the other lower stair, which is already built. Yep. Awesome. All right, so our upper step's in place. Now we have to lock it down. It's a little bit twisted because some of the lumber was a little bit warped, but we're gonna use some clamps and we'll clamp it down to the existing step that's already installed. And then I'm gonna use some Fasten Master timber locks to lock it to these posts in designated locations. And then I'll screw it down to this existing stair and we'll be done. So here we go. All right, guys, that's how you box frame a set of stairs. So if you learned a little something today about an alternate method of how to frame up your staircase, please click that subscribe button. Hit that bell icon to be notified when we're putting out fresh content. Don't forget to like this video and leave us a comment below. Thanks for watching and have a great day.